My name is Dr. Jim Oliver. I'm the provost of this campus, the Seminole campus of St. Petersburg College, and it's my pleasure to start the program by welcoming you to the campus and to this beautiful facility, of which we're all very proud. If this is your first time on the Seminole campus, I hope you'll return and see more of it in the daytime. We're especially proud of our environmental boardwalk, which is just out curtains, but just outside here. To my right, it serves as a living laboratory for our environmental science technology students and is also a great place, a pleasant place to just spend a few minutes enjoying nature. The library at the other end of this building is another pleasant place to relax and read or just to browse. So many places to see and enjoy, so please come back and join us on the Seminole campus another time. I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of the special folks who've made this evening possible. First, our presenting media co-sponsors, Bright House Networks, WUSF Public Media, and the Tampa Bay Times. May I have a round of applause for these fine organizations, please? Thank you. And next, I'd like to recognize our founding members, those who have contributed at least $150 to help us launch the Village Square. Their names are in the program, but I'd like the founding members to please stand and be recognized. Founding members, please. And I'd also like to recognize our student guests who are here this evening. Would all of the students from 6 of the SPC campuses and 3 graduating seniors from Clearwater Catholic Central High School, would you please stand and be recognized? We particularly wanted our founding members, in fact, all of you, to know that this is how your contributions are put to use, to provide dinner scholarships for our students. So congratulations again. Thank you. And now, let's get this evening program underway. I'm going to ask our president, Dr. Bill Law, to make a few comments about what it means about being here this evening. Dr. Law.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much. Well, we have been looking forward to this day. Jim kicked us off in grand international style. We use the Eastern European model where, as you say the pledge, his picture is served everywhere, okay? And you have a real sense of what we're doing here. So Jim never misses an opportunity. Jim Oliver is the provost here at our Seminole campus, and he's done a spectacular job. Let me say some welcomes. We are here tonight because a lot of people have committed a lot of time and energy and good ideas to get us here. As I am wont to say, we all work for somebody else, and I work for a wonderful board of trustees who have been exceptionally supportive of the idea of the Institute as it has unfolded. The chairman of that board is with us tonight, Mr. Terry Brett. Terry, would you stand and be recognized, please? We have a very liberal return policy, so I want to also recognize Mr. Ken Burke, who just left our board, okay? Ken had... Ken has a long history with us and has served with great distinction for us. Let me say that, among others, though, again, somebody whose commitment to our community has been long-standing and something something to watch from both near and far, Senator Dennis Jones, who is now, I think, term limited out. If I find that he is now looking at homes in another district, I'll give you the heads up and we can report that quickly where he can then continue to serve. It would not be appropriate for us to do this tonight without the recognizing David Clement, who is the director of our institute and really the brains behind the outfit. His white paper led to this institute, and David, please be recognized. I know you've put a lot into this, okay? Sometimes it's a little hard to know which hat we're wearing. We have an Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions, which is the largest umbrella, and that's the piece that's tied to our academic program and not unfound in good colleges throughout America. One of the posts that support that broad overview is the Village Square, which is aligned very closely, and it's intended to have civic dialogue. With us tonight is a good friend who I had a chance to work with and who has great experience and has been successful, is Liz Joyner, and she is the director of the Village Square in Tallahassee. Where'd Liz go? There she is. Liz is out there to shortstop our guest of honor to get him to come to Tallahassee, I guess. I don't know, she'll do something. But, and then we just recognize students, and I love all my students, and I just, we do this so that it's part of an academic experience. But we have Alistair stand up. Alistair Glover is our recent graduate. Alistair has been recognized here at the college, but more importantly, he was on the All Florida academic team, and then he was the #1 student in Florida this year. He was the Coca-Cola Scholar for the state of Florida, and keep your eye on Alistair. He's headed for great things. But he often reminds me of why we do what we do. Alistair has very, very effective accomplishments. But Alistair, at one part of his life, thought he could go it alone and took 5 or 6 years off, Alistair? Yeah, before he came back to us. And once he got here, we couldn't contain him, but his role has been great. The Village Square. We kick off tonight what we hope will be a long-standing and beneficial part of our greater community. I think that it is no secret that in our society now, one of the pieces that we all hope would move to the fore is a civil dialogue among people who maybe hold different opinions. But there are very few outlets for civil dialogue. If we want to flip to TV, we can just go through the litany of people shouting at each other at 7 o'clock at night. I don't know about you, but I move away from that. When the shouting starts, I leave, and then I don't go back to people who think that is a form of entertainment. What we want to do is have a place where serious public issues can be presented in a way that is fact-based. Among everything there are facts that go with every issue. People can assemble the facts differently and come to different conclusions. That we do that all the time. But have that dialogue as to how we can share insights, how we can work toward the commonweal that says, when it's all done, here's where we would all like to be. The paths to get there can be different. We found your presence here tonight, but we found that this was something of real importance in a prior occasion in Tallahassee when I worked with Liz. We could sell out a room like this 6-8 times a year. Not quite as fancy, but interested citizens who wanted to hear 2 or 3 experts talk, question them closely, but question them with a civility that allowed everybody to feel comfortable that we were all having a good discussion on key issues. So as we put together the plan for the Institute, one of the things we wanted to do, the Institute's purpose is to take global issues and to see if we can purpose them down to what they mean locally. That's why we call it strategic policy solutions. So you take the biggest issues that people want to talk about and see if we can't bring some information, research, some structure to local dialogues on key issues. And we think the Village Square will be a place where we can do that. Our students can continue to work through our institute in conjunction with our public administration program. As we now have bachelor's degrees, we find new opportunities for all of that to happen. So we are very excited about all this. A lot of us have background and anecdotes and experiences with Senator Graham in his many, many years and roles of leadership in Florida. Some of us can go way, way back to the first time we walked into the legislature in 19 and Senator Graham was in a leadership role then. And then we watched him as governor. Then we watched him as U.S. Senator. Then we watched him in his leadership role as he has left the Senate and continues to work through his institute in ways that are beneficial to our community. And again, I think many of us recognize that Governor Graham holds positions strongly. I don't know about you, I've never been in his presence that I didn't feel comfortable. I've been in his presence when I didn't agree with what he was talking about, but I have never been in his presence that I didn't feel comfortable being near him, around him, and interested in what he had to say. So if he kicks us off tonight in a way that makes good sense, then we're all better served for that. Because I have an interest in politics, I am in the process of filibustering here, okay? So we will start I will then move into my Charlie Crist mode, and we will start recognizing people in the audience, okay? The governor's plane landed at 6:06. Somebody give me a nod. Somebody was Bob. Yes, it did land, and he is on the way here. So I suggest what we do is proceed with the food, enjoy the fellowship and camaraderie, and we'll clear the dishes just like we would around the kitchen table ourselves at home. And when Governor Graham gets here, we'll have time for him and plenty of questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not a member, as I said, we have a number of very liberal policies. So the chance to be a founder is still available to you, okay? But wait, there's more. No, if you believe in what we're doing, and you know, we're not going to get rich on this, but we need to find ways to support our students and to keep this venture alive. Please see some of the staff folks or me, and we'll make sure you have the right form to fill out, and your support will be most welcome to us. So if what we're doing here tonight is of interest to you as a community leader, please join with us and continue to be a founder of this great venture. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We look forward to a very robust evening of discussion with Governor Graham. Thank you all.
It's my honor to currently serve as chairman of the board of the Institute, and it's my further honor to be able to introduce our very distinguished speaker. Few people you could say our speaker needs no introduction better than our speaker, because everybody in this room knows all about our speaker. Dr. Law took much of my material earlier, but you all know that he spent 12 years in the Florida legislature, spent 8 years as our governor, and 18 years in the United States Senate, retiring in January of 2005. He spent the next year as a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy Law School. But there are a few things you may not know. He was born Daniel Robert Graham in Coral Gables, and he grew up on a cattle and dairy farm, where he did all of the wonderful chores a child of that setting does. He drove tractors, he shoveled manure, he picked up eggs, did all the good things, got good training, and then he started working one day a year, or one day a month, as we all know, which was interesting for public servants at that time in Florida. Well, in the Senate, he served as chairman for 18 months of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He was named Dade County's Best All-American Boy by the Miami Herald. And he also served as president of the student body of Miami High School. He went to the University of Florida, and he was a member of Florida Blue Key and is a member of the University of Florida Hall of Fame. He went on to law school at Harvard, and if my mathematics is correct, this year he becomes a 50-year member of the Florida Bar. And what that gets him is a free lunch if he goes to the bar convention. I can't wait. In 4 years, I'll qualify for that myself. Since he retired, he's been busy, and if you look at the three most critical issues facing our country right now, we have the environment, we have national security, and we have the economy. And right in the heart of that is Senator Graham. He serves as co-chair of the National Commission on the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill and offshore drilling. That's the environment. He's chairman of the Commission on the Prevention of Weapons of Mass Destruction, Proliferation, and Terrorism. He's chairman of the WMD Center, which is a 501c3 research organization, and he sits on the CIA External Advisory Board. That's national security. He's also a member of the Commission on Financial Crisis Inquiry, and that's our economy, right in the heart of it. And his website says something very interesting. It says that there is no policy decision in modern Florida that does not have his fingerprints all over it, and that is true. And perhaps what he's most proud of is that he is the chairman of the Board of Overseers of the Bob Graham School for Public Service at the University of Florida. Without further ado, it's my distinct honor to introduce to you Senator Bob Graham.
Thank you very much, Judge. I appreciate those kind remarks. I don't know about having fingerprints over everything. My mother used to tell me to wash your hands. Let me first recognize some of the people who made the Village Square and this evening possible, starting with President Law. Thank you very much for your leadership in not only here, but previously at Tallahassee Community College in expanding the knowledge of government and citizenship in a place where it's direly needed. A man with whom I've been associated with a long time, particularly in areas of education, Tom Furlong is here, and thank you for being the spark for this evening. And he's accompanied by his daughter, who he tells me when I ran for governor in 1978, we had a publication of some sort, and as a 2-year-old, she appeared in the publication, and she's now asking for her copyright and royalty payments. But she now is with the State Department, based in one of those impronounceable Caucasian states. Dave Clement is the one who has really put this event together, and I thank him very much. Senator Dennis Jones. Dennis, congratulations. I see your name is on the beautiful building next door. Well deserved. Terry Brett, chair of the Board of Trustees of St. Petersburg State College, and I will say your president speaks very highly of you, which shows that he not only is perceptive but also smart. I apologize for being somewhat late. I'm going to blame it on Southwest Airlines, which had promised to run a special plane for me from Fort Lauderdale at 2:40, and we took off at 5:15. So a little delay, but I want to tell you, it was not the first time that I was late in Pinellas County. One of my 408 work days, and there were a number in Pinellas County, but one particularly was a work day as an unemployed person. That may sound a little contradictory, but I wanted to see what it was like to try to get a job through the official organizations. And so I showed up bright one morning at the employment service in St. Petersburg, where you were divided. There were those who were looking for a permanent job were one side of the room. Those, including myself, who were just looking for a day's work were on the other side. And if you were on the other side, you got a number. And as requests for jobs came in, you were called up based on your number. Well, after about a half an hour, they finally got to my number, and they called me up and they said, "We've got a job. There's a a firm called Budget Office World. I hope it's still in business, that I didn't destroy it. And they're looking for someone to help them move furniture off their truck. Would you be willing to do that? And I said, yes, I would. So I filled out a form, and among the questions on the form was, what was your highest level of education? Now, I wanted to be honest, but not overly self-promotional, so I just put down the word college. The man who was interviewing me took my card, he looked it over, and then he looked rather quizzically at me, and he said, you're a college man, and you're here to get a day's work delivering furniture? And he paused, he said, well, don't feel badly about that. He said, we have a man who comes in here at least once a month for a day's work, and he's a graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Pause. Now, of course, he's an alcoholic. So I knew the category that I had been placed in. So I take the bus out to Budget Office World, and I show up, and the man who runs the warehouse was very happy that I was there, and the man who was going to drive the truck was happy that he's going to have a helper, and we took off. It had a lot of interesting adventures around Pinellas County, and then finally we got back. We had one of those adventures lasted considerably longer than it was supposed to, so we were late getting back. That's the hook of this story. This is not the first time I was late in Pinellas County. And the man who'd been so nice when we left came out very mad. And he said, one, you're late. I needed my truck back on time. Number two, as soon as you left, the St. Pete Times, and I understand that maybe Paul or someone from the Times Paul, your people got me in trouble. They sent a photographer out to take a picture. We'd already, of course, photographers are always, late morning people. We were long since gone to work. And the warehouse man said, who are you? I said, well, I'm a photographer for the St. Petersburg Times. And he says, what are you doing here? He says, well, I want to take a picture of Bob Graham. He said, Bob Graham, he's the guy the Employment Service sent me out here to unload furniture. He says, well, Bob Graham is also running for governor of Florida. When I told my boss that we had a gubernatorial candidate who was on our truck, he was mad as hell. He said the Employment Service shouldn't send somebody out here who didn't know more about moving furniture, and that guy's a Democrat, and I'm a Republican. So that was the last time I was so late to something in St. Petersburg, and again, I apologize. Since I left the Senate in January of '05, my passion has been citizenship, and that's why I'm so pleased and honored to be here at the Village Square, which shares that passion. For me, that was an evolutionary process. In 1974, I was chairman of the State Senate Education Committee, and prior to the legislative session, we were holding hearings at different schools around the state. On this particular day, we were in Jacksonville at Wolfson High School, which is sort of a middle-class high school in the suburbs. And at each of these hearings, we had a block of time reserved for students. And I understand, where are the students? I see some people who look like they're probably younger than the faculty, but you never know these days. Good. You may relate to this. So we had an unusually large number of students at Wolfson. And when they appeared, they had one issue they wanted to bring to us: bad food in the cafeteria. I wasn't surprised about that. At Miami High, the food wasn't great. What did surprise me was that they had come to the state senate to talk about the bad food in the cafeteria. So I asked, are we the first persons that you have talked to about this issue? And they said, no, you're actually third. Well, that made me feel a little better until I asked, who was number 1 and 2? Well, number 1 was Hans Tansler, who was the mayor of Jacksonville, who treated them very courteously but said, I really don't have anything to do with the food in the cafeteria. So they went for their second stop to Dale Carson, the sheriff of Duval County, who said, I agree the food is probably bad, but it's not criminal, so it's not my problem, and you're number 3. Well, a few weeks later, it happened that I had been invited to talk to some civics teachers in Dade County, and I told that story about Wolfson High School and concluded by saying there's something wrong in the teaching of civics if students get to be almost high school graduates and they think the mayor, the sheriff, or the state legislature is the place you go for cold pizza on Friday. I thought it was a pretty good comment myself, but one of the teachers who happened to be a friend of mine stood up and she said in somewhat stronger language than I'm going to use that she was sick to death of politicians telling teachers how to do their job better when we didn't know what we were talking about, and that the only way we could find out what was going on was to actually get in the classroom and see what it was like to deal with students who hadn't done their homework, indifferent parents, bureaucratic administrations, and all those rules that you guys in Tallahassee have passed. So I accepted her offer. Now, I thought what she had in mind was a couple of hours on Tuesday afternoon, but when she called me and said, Bob, I've worked it out. I said, great, what do you want me to do? She says, come to Carroll City Senior High School, which is an almost inner-city school in North Dade County. On the day after Labor Day, report to room 207, and you will be teaching high school civics for the next 18 weeks. Well, that was a little more than I had quite bargained for, but I thought I made a commitment. By God, I'm going to keep it. Well, one of the smart things I did was to find a young social studies teacher who shared my passion about civics, and we worked over the summer on a curriculum entitled What Every Citizen Needs to Know to Make Democracy Work for Them. What are the essential skills of effective citizenship, and how can those skills be taught to a group of high school students? It was a wonderful experience. I not only did what the teacher had suggested, learn the reality of what was going on in a modern high school, but I also learned the difference between learning by having somebody give you a lecture about it or read it in a textbook and learn it by actually living it. I mean, I can tell you the difference of learning about delivering furniture in August in St. Petersburg. It's a hell of a lot different doing it than having somebody tell you what it's like to do it. And then to get chewed out because you were late and because you were a Democrat. I mean, that's very hurtful. And that became the spark of my interest over the balance of the next 30 plus years in teaching young people about the skills of effective government. It was also the beginning of, that was workday number 1. Workday number 408, the last one, was being an elf for Santa Claus in Tavernier, Florida. I'll say that was a lot easier than teaching school. When I retired from the Senate, I became a senior fellow at the Kennedy School, and as such, you're expected to teach a class of undergraduates. You can select whatever topic. Well, I'm not very creative, so I selected the same topic that I'd used with the students in Carroll City. I quickly found out that the students at Harvard, the undergraduates, were only slightly more ignorant about civics than the high school students that I had taught in 1974 at Carroll City. Then, when I came back to Florida, I established a program at the University of Florida called the Center for Public Service, which again, has as its mission to try to prepare young people with the skills that will allow them to be an effective citizen. And at the same time, I tried to reduce this concept of what does a citizen need to know into a book that could be broadly distributed, and it is called America, the Owner's Manual. And now I'm going to make a crass commercial statement that a few of these books are going to be available for sale for anyone who would like to purchase them after this dinner. Some of the challenges that Village Square and other programs are trying to deal with are the state of citizenship in America. When I graduated from Miami High in 1955, I had taken 3 one-year courses in civics between the 7th and the 12th grade. That was not unusual. That was the standard in Florida. It was the national standard. I now have 11 grandchildren, 3 of whom have graduated from high school. None of those 3 had more than 1 semester of civics, and at least one of them had no civics during their 7th to 12th grade period. And that is the standard of civics in today's public schools in Florida and in America. The consequences of this sharp decline in exposing young people, not only to the civics, which is the institutions and processes of government, but also the citizenship. What does it mean to be a tolerant person? What does it mean to be a person who is open to even disagreeing points of view? How do you go about reasoning through to a compromise which is both respectful but also takes the best of a variety of ideas? Those are the kinds of skills and aptitudes and basic knowledge that has been lost in this reduction of both the quantity and the quality of civics instruction. I compare it to a basketball coach who has his team come into the locker room, and for 4 weeks they stay in the locker room as he discusses the rules of basketball, the history of basketball, the strategy of basketball, but never takes his players out onto the court to actually play the game of basketball. I'm afraid that is not an inappropriate description of much of what occurs in civics today. We're seeing the consequences of this in a number of ways. There is a group which I happen to serve on the board of directors called the National Conference on Citizenship. It was established by President Eisenhower, and it's the only federally chartered organization with the specific function of encouraging citizenship among Americans. Each year, they do a civic health index where approximately 2,000 Americans are interviewed on a number of issues that relate to good citizenship. For the past 3 years here in Florida, the Graham Center, in conjunction with the Lou Fry Center at the University of Central Florida, has been doing a survey of a sufficient number of Floridians to be able to have a statistically valid number for this state, which can then be compared against the other states. The latest such comparison, I am sorry to report, ranked Florida as the 46th of the 50 states in terms of the indicators of citizenship, such as some of the most obvious ones, registering to vote, actually voting, some that are not so obvious, such as willingness to work with neighbors to solve a local problem, volunteering, belonging to a group like the League of Women Voters or a service club that promotes civic activities. This last year, we did a specific Florida survey on a group of Americans who are particularly important, millennials. These are Americans between the ages of 18 and 29, a group which has consistently lagged other age categories of Americans on indicators of citizenship. This study of Florida millennials reinforced that lowest category of participation, and that within the category, Florida millennials tended to be in the lower half, frequently in the lower quartile of national millennials. So I don't say this to be dispiriting or overly critical, but like the doctor who you come to with a sick stomach, you want a diagnosis that is as close to truth as possible so that you can then begin to give some of the prescriptions that will be necessary to reverse the ailment. We've got a sick patient with citizenship in the United States, and particularly here in Florida, and we need to be serious about getting onto the business of finding and implementing the proper prescriptions. I believe that institutions like St. Petersburg State College are going to be a key part of reversing this decline in citizenship. This institution is important for a number of reasons. It is twice as likely that a graduate of St. Petersburg State College will register to vote, will vote, and it's almost 3 times as likely that they will volunteer to do some important civic activity as compared to their same peer group who did not attend an institution like St. Petersburg State College. This institution and other higher education institutions have the potential of being the cauldron for a renewed citizenship. This institution is also going to be, as it has been in its previous life as a community college, an important provider of the civic leadership for Pinellas County and for Florida. It also is the place that will train many of the teachers who will go into the classrooms of Pinellas and other districts in Florida and provide the next generation of students with an understanding of their civic responsibility. And colleges also play an important role in setting a tone for the community that they are in. It's been my feeling that if you wanted to know how good a teacher training institution was, that the first thing you should do is to go to the schools most proximate to that teacher training institution. If the schools closest to the place that's preparing the teachers aren't very good, to me that's a signal as to the quality of the teacher preparation, that it is not having, it's not strong enough to have a positive influence on its closest neighbors. I think the same is true in citizenship, that those institutions which have strong citizenship standards will influence the community in which they are located. And this influence is not just civic. One of the interesting studies that the National Conference on Citizenship has done recently is the relationship between good citizenship and a strong economy. Of the 50 major metropolitan areas in America, the ones that have the strongest index of civic health also are those that have the lowest unemployment and the strongest indicators of economic growth. There is a relationship between the competencies, the aptitudes, the sense of community that comes with good civic health that will affect economic well-being. I think that in our state, this new cluster of state colleges, which most of them are less than a decade old with that designation, represent a bright star in our firmament of restoring civic health. They are new and thus are not encumbered with some of the status quo that older institutions tend to have. They are also new in the sense that they are defining themselves and what kind of institutions they want to be. Thomas Jefferson said in his Principles of Education that a primary purpose of education in the new America was to prepare its citizens with an understanding of their rights and responsibilities and with the competencies to discharge those rights and responsibilities to their neighbors and to the nation. And that this instruction was not to be elitist. It was not for a few. It was education that all citizens should have so that they could be fully participating in our democracy. I believe this institution has the opportunity to carry that definition of a primary role of education into this new century and into this community. Citizenship, I hope, will be a central theme of this college. The best example of that is not a new institution in America. In fact, it's quite old, but it is one which has undergone the tremendous pains of renewal. That is Tulane University in New Orleans. After Katrina, the city was virtually leveled. Many of the most important institutions, their big hospital had been gutted. Many of their schools were unusable. Tulane said, we are, as an important institution in New Orleans, we are going to take on the responsibility of being the centerpiece, the driving force for the new New Orleans. And every facet of this university is going to be dedicated to that task. And so the medical school established 90 clinics throughout New Orleans to provide the health care that no longer could be provided through what had been their traditional hospital delivery system. The architecture program undertook to begin to redesign destroyed buildings in destroyed neighborhoods, not only in ways that were architecturally appropriate to the heritage of New Orleans, but that could also better sustain the next Katrina. Every student at Tulane has to do some community service every semester that they are enrolled. That's a university which has embraced citizenship not as a peripheral activity, but as the core reason and function and organizing principle for the university. It's critical to fulfill that Jeffersonian principle that civics is not just for the elite few, that we assure that all the students who graduate are competent citizens. They are citizens who both understand our democratic institutions and have the skills to work effectively within them. Why is all of this important? It's important because it is going to determine our future. There are many things that we don't like about what's going on in politics today. Too much incivility, too much gridlock, too much partisanship. While I think there are a number of institutions that bear some of the responsibility for this, I think political parties, which used to see as their role to promote people to be good citizens, when immigrants came to Ellis Island, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party both had desks. And although these people were the newest arrivals and were a long way from being citizens, they wanted these new arrivals to commit themselves, that they would become citizens and that the political party would be a source of assistance in achieving that goal. Now, of course, the parties had an institutional interest because they would like not only for them to be citizens, but to be either Republicans or Democrats. But they saw their role as expanding the base of democracy. Today, so many campaigns are run around the theory, let's only appeal to our base and actually discourage people that we aren't fairly confident going to vote for our candidate from registering and voting. And unfortunately, Florida has experienced some of this recently. So it's important that we provide a firm civic base for all of our citizens so that they can participate and be the best, maybe the only antidote we have to dysfunctional democracy. President Reagan was frequently quoted as having said, if not us, who, if not now, when? If I could, in a spirit of bipartisanship, steal his quote a bit and ask the question, if not St. Petersburg State College, what institution is going to assume this responsibility for this community? And if we do not do it now, how much longer can we tolerate a continued decline in citizenship in our America? Now is the time, and this is the place. Thank you. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Graham. What a great message to launch the Village Square with. Exactly what we believe, and we accept that challenge. And now we would ask if you would, we could prevail upon you for a few questions and answers.
If the questions are easy and will provoke a positive response, I will take the questions. If they are divisive, Dennis Jones has agreed that he will answer the question.
Well, since we got a slightly late start, if we could prevail upon you to stay a few minutes beyond the time we told you, so that we could get to a few of those questions. I know you have had a chance to raise a lot of questions in the audience. I would just like to emphasize a few ground rules, which we're starting with Village Square for questions. One is to state your name before you begin, and we'll have the microphone, we'll walk around with it to get that on the record. Two is to keep the question brief, no more than 45 seconds. Three is to make it a question, not a speech, please. And what is four? To observe the standards of civility that Village Square represents. So I'll ask the governor to pick out those who he chooses for questions, and Professor Kronschnabel will be one end of the room and I'll be the other, and we'll walk with the mic. So who gets the first question, Governor?
Okay, I'm going to recognize two people at a time so that the mic can be going to the second person while the first person.
All right.
Isn't that you're pretty impressed with that, isn't it?
You're the governor.
So the gentleman over here will be the first, and who else would like to ask a question? Yes, the gentleman here will be number two.
Thomas Worthington.
Mr.
As far as the Citizens United case, does that make breaking the 60-vote filibuster in the Senate much more difficult?
Well, breaking the 60 vote is going to be difficult, as it has proven to be even before Citizens United. That may contribute slightly to it being more difficult. I have a rather simple suggestion as to how to reduce the incidence of the use of the filibuster, and that is to do it the old-fashioned way. in the old days, and this never happened in the 18 years that I was in the Senate, if there was going to be a filibuster, you were expected to really do it. I mean, Strom Thurmond talked for over 24 hours, which says something about his voice and his urological condition. And they tell the story about during one of those Strom Thurmond filibusters, George Mitchell had just become a senator from Maine. He was a federal judge, had a lifetime job. He loved the judiciary. That he thought he had arrived at his ultimate position. But Ed Muskie died. The Democratic governor of Maine prevailed upon Mitchell to take the appointment, saying you're the only person who could get reelected. And so finally George succumbed. And the first day he arrived, the Senate was in a filibuster. And this was, they had cots out in the hallways and in the little library, and it was at night, and the sea of bodies stretched out on these cots. Finally he decided, well, nothing's going to happen. I guess I better go to take my place. And since he was the newest one, his cot was right in the middle of all these other people, so he had to crawl over to get there. And he was feeling very, very bad for himself and sorry, wished he was back in the courtroom in Maine. And then he looked down, and the face that was looking up was John Warner. Now, at this time, John Warner was married to Elizabeth Taylor. And George said, I couldn't feel sorry for myself climbing over to get to my cot when John Warner could have been sleeping with Elizabeth Taylor. So I think that would be a quick way to reduce the enthusiasm for filibusters. Yes.
Thank you, David. Tony Collins, Governor, Senator. 10 years ago, I watched you in was National Airport. We were both flying back to Florida after some meetings in Washington.
I hope the plane was
More
late. On time.
Plane was late. But you came and you stood in the line with all of us, and there were several other senators who were leaving who didn't do that. I thought that was a great lesson in civics, that you stood in line, carried your own bag, had your own ticket. I don't think that's taught in civic class. Where are we going to instill that in our leadership going forward? How are we going to do that?
Well, I don't know if those, thank you for your comment. I hope I didn't violate that standard too many times, but I think that's the kind of thing that it isn't really a civics lesson. It's kind of the sort of lesson that you learn around the dinner table and observing your parents and your siblings, how they relate to each other and how they show respect for all people. You're going to give me the big head if you make any more comments like that. Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Russell Cronk, and my 11-year-old came up to me the other day and said, I hate the government. I hate my government. And my response to him was, well, you hate yourself. No, I don't. I hate my government. And his education in elementary school is structured more toward getting past the test than it is about being part of what is really truly taking place around him. So I had a long conversation with him about that and told him, you know, if you want to change things, when you get old enough to vote, you register to vote and you go change things. If you don't like them, you kick the bums out. But a lot of people just have given up on that idea that they have the power through the vote to do exactly that.
Oh, that's one of the disappointing parts of this increasing decline in citizenship is more and more people are opting out by saying you can't fight City Hall, my vote doesn't mean anything, why should I try? And it's not, in my opinion, just a matter of voting. To me, voting is the easiest aspect of citizenship. The things that really require effort are those that you do typically within your own community that demonstrate the qualities of good citizenship. The example you gave of your son, in Dulles Airport, there's a kiosk that sells political memorabilia. And one of the things that I saw a couple of years ago was a T-shirt, which had on the front an American flag and I love America. Then on the back of the T-shirt was exactly what your son's message was, but I hate its government. Well, the last time I said the Pledge of Allegiance, this is a symbol. The flag is cotton or some synthetic material, but it's what it symbolizes, and what it symbolizes is a republic, which is a government, and a republic that provides equal justice for all people. So the fact you cannot be a person who wears the flag on your chest and I hate the government on the back without being very schizophrenic. This will be the lady here. Yes. Hello.
Am I on? Okay. Alan Baumstein, and welcome. Senator, a few years ago, you led the effort to have a constitutional amendment in the state of Florida that would establish a board of governors for higher education that would have authority over the higher education programs and universities in the state of Florida. Our legislature this year, in a remarkable act of poor behavior, decided that they were
Singular act of poor behavior.
Singular act, that they were above that, and chose to bypass the Board of Governors, and I'm referring specifically to J.D. Alexander, Senator Alexander's efforts to establish the 12th University in Lakeland, Florida Polytechnic. I'd like your response to the action, and also my question is specifically how constitutionally does that hold water?
Well, it doesn't. It's clearly unconstitutional. The whole reason that in 2002, 62% of Floridians voted to establish a constitutional board that would represent the independence of higher education from political influence was because prior to 2002, there had been a spate of legislative proposals for various programs, particularly expensive programs like medical schools, and the Board of Regents, a statutory body, had been turning all these proposals down, saying they had not demonstrated need and they were too expensive. So the legislature abolished the Board of Regents and then on its own set up 3 medical schools and a number of other expensive programs. And so I think with that history, I hope the court will clearly see that this effort to not establish a single expensive program, but to establish a very expensive new university is beyond the power of the legislature to do and will find it unconstitutional. I think the real challenge is going to be who's going to bring the suit. I'm involved. Well, the answer is I'm not for this reason. I am involved in a suit now on the issue of does the legislature or does the Board of Governors have the responsibility to set tuition at universities. I believe the constitutional amendment is very clear that that's one of the powers that was transferred to the Board of Governors. The reason that we've been able to litigate that is there's a rather arcane provision in terms of standing, your right to go to bring a case, that a citizen can bring a suit if it relates to a specific economic issue. That's a little bit shorthand, but you can't bring a suit against the general powers of a body. So my assumption is that a citizen couldn't challenge that 12th university. The Board of Governors could challenge it if it chooses to do so. At this point, that there has been an indication of such a willingness. If you really want to get upset, and I'll say this particularly to the folks from the St. Pete Times, another newspaper, which will go unnamed, located in Jacksonville, ran a story in the last few days that 2 state senators have, through an account of a university, been funding projects which look to be very much their personal little fiefdoms, and they're being paid for through appropriations that are supposed to go for educational purposes. I think it's an outrage, and it is exactly the kind of abuse of higher education that the Board of Governors was supposed to rein in.
Senator Susan Glickman, if you would,
Excuse me, Stu, is there someone else who'd like to get the microphone? Yeah, there's a lady. We already have one. Okay, good.
It'll be an easy one.
You're still in the dugout, but you're going to, yeah.
I'd like to hear you speak to sort of the dual problems of hyperpartisanship and then the role that money's playing now. And that's so much different, I think, than when statesmen reigned in Tallahassee and elsewhere. But if you would talk to that.
Well, I think they're reinforcing in that the partisanship is not totally, but largely fueled by these special interest groups who typically have a very narrow but passionate agenda. And they make it as almost a condition of supporting candidates that the candidates will support their single issue, which means that if the candidate is elected, they don't have much flexibility. I mean, think of this fellow who's been going around for the last decade or more getting people to sign a petition before they're even elected that they'll never vote for a new tax. And then suddenly they get to Tallahassee or Washington and they say, you know, we can't support the basic programs, or the system that we have is fundamentally flawed, broken, and unfair. It needs to be changed, but if I suggest to do that, I'll be accused of raising taxes. So money has become a major factor in this partisanship. I think that, the Citizens United decision, which was mentioned, will go down in history with Dred Scott as one of the worst decisions of the Supreme Court. I think eventually it'll be overturned, but it probably is going to take some, just like Dred Scott took the better part of a half century, well, almost a full century, and this is going to take time also. There were some ideas that used to be thought of as pretty much mainstream, both in Florida and the nation. And one of those was that in order to reduce the influence of money, there should be some public support for candidates. And for many campaigns, that was the principal funding for the presidential elections. Today, it is such an insignificant amount of money that the candidates are just completely foregoing the public financing and going to the super PACs for their financial support.
Thank you, Governor, for taking my question. Roy Slater here at St. Pete College.
Yeah.
First, I especially appreciate your comment regarding politicians, elected officials, knowing what's happening in the classrooms. Many of us are dealing with forces, negative forces often that are pulling at young people, and we're trying to, as best we can, counter those negative forces. So I especially appreciate that comment. My question is a follow-up to the question that was asked a moment ago. When many Americans look to Washington, I think we become frustrated with the gridlock, the bickering, the excessive partisanship, the divisiveness, if you will. And I understand some of that goes back to the founding of our country, though the founders didn't anticipate or foresee political parties. So in your view, what will it take to bring the parties together, to bring Democrats and Republicans together, to sit down and have a civil dialogue, a discussion, so that we don't see these shouting matches and they're not constantly posturing for the next election? Thank you.
I wish I had an answer to that question. You know, the times in American history when we've had the least of that bad behavior and excessive partisanship have been when we were in the great crises. There wasn't, for instance, during World War II and the 40 years of the Cold War, a lot of this, because people recognized we had our survival at stake. We didn't have the luxury of being rude and impolite to each other. We had to learn how to get along. I hope we don't have to have a resurrection of World War II or the Cold War to get back to this. It may be that we're going to be facing a situation in just a few months where there's so many things coming together. One being the Congress has set the budget of the United States on autopilot, that unless something happens between now and January 1st, there are going to be draconian cuts both on the military and social programs. Second, President Bush's tax cuts expire on the 31st of December, which will mean that everybody will have an increase in their taxes unless something is done. And shortly thereafter, we'll have another one of those happy parties around the debt ceiling. Those three events all coming in a very narrow period of time may be so forceful that they'll require people to figure out we better learn how to get along or we're really going to have a disaster.
Senator Graham?
Yes.
Charles Spellman, Pinellas County Schools. I'm a teacher in high school at Countryside High School. 25 years ago, you spoke at my commencement at the University of Florida and actually stopped me on the stage, shook my hand, and asked me, young man, what do you plan on doing? I said, I plan on becoming a teacher. So here we are.
I hope I said something positive after
Yes,
you
you did. Very good speech, I'd say. Recently, I had a young lady in my classroom look a little distraught. I asked her some questions, and I got to her, and she found out that her parents have not become U.S. citizens yet, and she was turning 18 years old. And she couldn't, if she did not become a citizen she was on her own now. That was her whole thing, because her parents became a citizen, she would become a citizen. So she was going through the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. I said, if you're in my American government class, we're going to make sure that you pass that part of the test. Luckily, the whole class bound together and helped her out, and we studied a lot, and proudly she just took her oath of citizenship last week. So it was very good. My question is, one thing we learned about in my class is that the road to become a citizen. The road to becoming a citizen,
Yep.
and the difficulty it is, and especially with illegal immigration in this country. And I think all of us in this room can kind of look at how our families came here from a long time ago, maybe no matter what, how simplistic it was. And today it's so complicated. One thing the kids learn is that if you want to come here legally, you might have to wait 10 years for your paperwork to be processed before they even recognize you to come here legally. Is there any discussion about that, of changing the immigration process instead of some of the thing with all the illegal people in this country? Have you ever heard anything in Washington going on with that? Because it changes throughout history, and that's my concern.
The answer is no. What little attention has been given to immigration has largely been to make it more difficult, not easier, and particularly to try to avoid dealing with the question of the 15 million undocumented immigrants that are in the country now. People give proud speeches about not giving amnesty. I haven't heard the first person who said, let's have a really happy period in American history. Let's round up 15 million people and start shipping them back to wherever they came from. Next to the economic issues, I think immigration may be the most contentious and difficult issue that we're trying to face.
Hello, my name's Amanda Long. I'm a student. In talking about what the state legislator is currently doing about refocusing program funds for more math and science-based programs, educational programs, what I'm wondering is, what do you think can be done to offset that, to reestablish the importance and relevancy of liberal arts degrees?
One thing we need to do is to have a serious reexamination of the FCAT, what it's doing, and what its consequences are. About 3 months ago, the Department of Education did, for the first time, an aggregation of all the scores within each of the 67 school districts, and then gave the school district a grade. Then they arrayed the 67 from the best to the worst county. The best county, highest score, was St. John's, which is St. Augustine is the county seat. The lowest was Madison, of which Madison is the county seat. When I looked at that list, I had a sense that there was something going on here that wasn't educational. And so I asked some statisticians at the University of Florida to do what's called a regression analysis, where they take other factors, some of which were education, such as amount of money spent per student in each of the 67 counties, what was the teacher-student ratio in the 67 counties. Others were unrelated to education. Of all those factors, what do you think was the single factor which accounted for more than half of the reason that a county was either number 1 or number 67? Anybody want to make some suggestions? That may have been related to what I'm going to announce and stun you with, but that wasn't precisely the fact. No. Huh? No. Well, okay, I'm going to give one more shot. Huh? Child poverty was the single most predictive factor in terms of where a school district ranked in terms of its educational score. St. John's happens to have the smallest percentage of its children in poverty, and Madison happens to be one of the counties with the highest percentage of children in poverty. So we've got a system which is being used for all kinds of educational judgments, whether a student can graduate from high school, whether a teacher gets promoted, whether a school either gets a bonus or a deduct. All of those are based on a test which has virtually nothing to do with what happens in the classroom. And at the same time, the institutions that do have something to do with what's going on in the classroom, like those things that affect child poverty, go unaccounted, not held responsible. I hope that maybe the shock of what has just happened with this writing score will be sufficient to cause people to step back and say, this is more than just a writing score issue. There's something fundamentally wrong with what we're doing, and let's try to figure out a better way to do it. I believe in accountability. I think there should be some rational means of holding people to the standards that they have set for themselves in terms of educational progress for children. I just say that the FCAT is not accomplishing that purpose, is causing us to make some, I think, very poor decisions in a number of areas, and maybe most importantly is causing us not to focus on the things that appear to really be making a difference. Yes?
Jane Searle.
Excuse me, ma'am, but I don't know if I answered your question, but I was waiting for somebody to ask me an FCAT question. So I took advantage of your question. that's one thing that you learn in politics is if you're going to go, Paul, put your fingers in your ears because you may not like this, but if you're going to go before an editorial board or on a television program, you decide in advance, these are 4 things that I want to get across. If none of the questions allow me to get across those 4 things, hell, I'll disregard the question and I'll say it anyway. So you kind of got that. Well,
and those, and those can actually be, targeted and assessed and then nurtured, at the school age. So you could make the argument that modifying the FCAT or reassessing how it's evaluated and schools are graded could influence a positive change towards more liberal, more holistic education as opposed to just focusing high school, middle school students. So in a roundabout way, you could make your argument that you answered my question.
yeah, and of course, the FCAT doesn't cover most of what we would call liberal education, doesn't include any of the social sciences or art or the humanities. So it discourages. One of the reasons that the teaching of civics has gone from 3 one-year courses between the 7th and the 12th grade, and if you're lucky, 1 semester between the 7th and 12th grade, is because civics, like history, economics, geography, is not a tested subject, and if it ain't tested, it ain't taught. And you see, I had a bad experience in English class myself.
Thank
Okay.
you. Jane Cerulli. I'm a student in the Public Policy and Administration program. For those of us students here that understand civics and recognize the importance of citizenship, what advice would you have going forward as far as organizations or institutions to get involved in at the local, state, or national level?
Well, I think you're involved with a very important institution and one that will be very valuable learning experience for you. I think, in fact, I had a young man in the Fort Lauderdale airport where we had a 3-hour seminar on exactly that subject, and he asked me, what should I do to get ready if I wanted to get involved in public life? And I said, among other things, get a very good education, establish an economic base so that you're not in the job for the money and therefore may be susceptible to some irresistible influences. Florida, incidentally, over the last decade has had, in absolute numbers, not on a per capita basis, more of its state and local officials convicted of a crime related to their public office than any other state in the nation. It used to be New Jersey and Illinois were there, but now we're number 1. And I think a lot of that goes back to people who got themselves into a position. Maybe they were self-selected to get in this position where when the temptation came, they couldn't resist it. And then I'd find a subject that you really care about, that you're passionate about. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's education, maybe it's healthcare, elderly, whatever it is, and get deeply involved in some organization that is focused on that issue so that you can demonstrate your seriousness of purpose and your competence for whatever other position you'd like to seek.
This is going to have to be the last question.
Okay. And I want to announce I am not the one who imposed this limitation.
And I
Yeah.
hope this is a decent question. Tonight's topics obviously have 2 broad categories, government and education, and it seems like the questions as well as the subject areas devolve into the issue of we get the government we deserve and we get the education system we're willing to pay for. The problem is that, in my opinion, politicians and teachers are pretty much in the same boat. Who in their right mind would go into either profession? So how do we change that? And besides meetings like this?
Well, I think for teachers, there are first some economic realities. When I graduated from high school, American education had a virtual monopoly on two very talented groups of Americans. One of those were African Americans, because there were not the kind of opportunities in the other professions or high-profile occupations, and education was a means of giving a talented person an opportunity to express themselves. The other group were women, and my mother and my wife were both teachers during that period. My wife taught at Wellesley Middle School, a very upscale place. She got paid $500 a year less than the male teacher doing exactly the same thing with the same degrees and the same experience, because the theory was the male was probably supporting a family, the female was doing this as kind of a side occupation. Now, again, women have suddenly had this burgeoning of opportunities, and yet the economics of education have not reflected the fact that we suddenly are competing for the best as opposed to having the best available to us because they don't have any other options. I think that's a reality that has to be faced. Second, I think we need to encourage the best young people to go into education. It's not the two countries which consistently score the highest on international standards of education. And you may have seen this ad that I think it's Exxon Mobil is running, which shows where America is among nations. The two places that consistently are at the top of the list are Finland and Singapore. Now, on the surface, Finland and Singapore don't seem to have a lot in common. But one thing they have in common is that to be a teacher in those two countries, you have to have graduated in the top 20% of your class. So they have made a conscious decision that they are going to select only the most able people to be teaching the next generation of Singaporean and Finnish young people. I think we need to have a system that encourages the best of our young people to consider public education. Friends, thank you very much. I appreciate the chance to first unload my bad behavior as a furniture mover. I'm sorry that I'm an alcoholic and a Democrat, two serious impediments. I also appreciate the chance to talk about the opportunity that I think this college has to be a national leader in citizenship. I thank each one of you for caring enough about this college and about this program to come out this evening, and I thank you for the opportunity to lay my bias and prejudices and other distortions upon you tonight. Thank you very much.
Senator Graham will, Governor Graham will be out in the lobby signing books, but we want to bring up the Vice Chairman of the Institute, Dr. Kanika Tomlin, to wind us up.
Be super quick. I'm Kanika Tomlin, Vice Chairman of the St. Petersburg College Strategic Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. And I'll be super brief because competing passions call us away. As much as we love this oasis of Civil discourse. My competing passion this night is a 10-year-old boy who has a math exam tomorrow, and I know that he's studying something. I need to make sure that it's math. But not before thanking you, Governor Graham, for your great insights. We accept your vision to be national leaders in this area, and we invite you to witness that as that happens. We last spoke when you were guest lecturing at my doctoral class in May 2010. You elevated our consciousness then. You've done so tonight, and we greatly appreciate that. Thank you guys so much all for coming out tonight. We hope that you'll become a part of the Village Square. Special thanks to Janet Long, who nurtured this baby when it was just an infant and has encouraged it to fly. We appreciate all you've done. Make sure that you get a book. I got mine signed in May 2010. You are congratulating me on my commitment to active citizenship, and I hope that I validate that tonight. Thank you very much. Good night.